Under the watchful eye of the neighborhood's self-appointed moral guardian, a simple morning ritual turned into a public spectacle, challenging my right to manage my anxiety in peace. Accusations flew, the police got involved, and my personal struggle became the day's main entertainment when Karen mistakes my anxiety meds for drugs, calls 911 on me. Here's how it all went down. It was just another day in the neighborhood, the kind where the sun decides to be generous, spilling its golden warmth over everything it touches. I was sitting on my porch, the one spot where I felt a semblance of peace, trying to calm the storm that perpetually raged inside me. My hands trembled slightly as I reached for my lifeline, a small, inconspicuous bottle labeled with my name and the words, anxiety medication. "He's taking drugs!" a voice screeched, shattering the fragile tranquility of my morning. I didn't need to look up to know it was Karen, the self-appointed guardian of moral high ground in our neighborhood. I sighed. "It's just my anxiety meds, Karen," I tried to explain, my voice steady despite the quiver in my hands. Karen, with her arms akimbo and eyes wide with feigned concern, wasn't having any of it. "Drugs are drugs, young man. I'm calling the police," she declared, her voice a mix of triumph and indignation. I couldn't believe this was happening. Again! Karen had a history of blowing things out of proportion, but calling the cops over my prescribed medication was a new low, even for her. As the day wore on, the situation escalated far beyond what I could have imagined. Karen, in her relentless pursuit of justice, had not only called the police, but had also managed to gather a small crowd of onlookers, all whispering and throwing me looks that ranged from pity to outright disdain. The police arrived, their expressions stern and businesslike. "We received a call about drug use. Can you explain what's happening here?" one of the officers asked, his hand resting on his belt. With a deep breath, I recounted the morning's events, explaining my condition and showing them the prescription bottle. "It's for my anxiety," I said, hoping my words would dispel the tension that had thickened the air. Karen, however, was not done. "He's lying. I saw him with my own eyes taking those drugs," she insisted, pointing an accusatory finger at me. The officers, trained to handle situations with more complexity than Karen's black and white worldview, examined my prescription and consulted quietly among themselves. After what felt like an eternity, they turned back to us. "It's a valid prescription," one officer finally said, his voice firm yet not unkind. "Taking prescribed medication is not a crime." Karen's face turned a shade of red I hadn't thought possible for human skin. But, she stammered, her arsenal of righteousness suddenly empty. The crowd began to disperse, their thirst for drama unquenched. The officers offered me a nod of understanding before they too left, leaving me alone with Karen, who looked as if she had swallowed a lemon. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Karen's attempt to brand me a criminal had failed, but the damage was done. Whispers followed me whenever I stepped outside, and the weight of judgmental stares pressed down on me like a physical burden. But it was the confrontation that evening that marked the climax of this absurd drama. Karen, unable to let go of her self-righteous crusade, approached me as I sat on my porch, the scene of that morning's debacle. "You shouldn't be taking those things. They're bad for you," she said, her tone a bizarre mix of concern and condescension. I looked up at her, my patience finally wearing thin. "Karen, my health is none of your business. My doctor prescribed these meds to me and they help me cope with my anxiety. You have no right to judge me or to interfere in my life," Karen huffed, her eyes narrowing. "I was just trying to help. People like you need to be saved from themselves." I couldn't help but laugh, a short, bitter sound. "Saved from myself? Karen, the only thing I need saving from is your relentless meddling. Please, just leave me alone." She stormed off, muttering under her breath about ingratitude and the moral decay of society. In the days that followed, Karen's presence became less oppressive. Perhaps she had found a new cause to champion, or maybe, just maybe, she had taken my words to heart. Either way, the reprieve was welcome. Yet, the incident left a bitter taste in my mouth. The realization that my struggle with anxiety, something so personal and challenging, could be twisted into a spectacle for judgment and ridicule, was both infuriating and deeply saddening. I learned to be more discreet with my medication, a small concession to the judgmental eyes of the world. But inside, a fire had been lit, a determination to not let Karen or anyone else dictate how I should manage my health. As for Karen, she remains a fixture in the neighborhood, a constant reminder of the narrow-mindedness and intolerance that lurks in the most ordinary places. But her attempts to provoke and judge now fall on deaf ears, at least where I'm concerned. In the end, the most repulsive aspect of this whole ordeal wasn't the unwarranted police visit or the public spectacle. It was the realization that in Karen's eyes, my struggle with anxiety was just another opportunity for her to assert her misguided sense of superiority. And that, more than anything, is a pill too bitter to swallow. I couldn't believe it when Karen made such a fuss over nothing. It's medication, not contraband. Some people really need to learn the difference between helping and meddling. As a father of 4 boys, I was drawn into one of the most challenging situations a parent can face, trying to mend the broken relationship between my older son, Ezra, and his younger brother, Joseph. A harrowing incident from their childhood had driven a wedge between them, causing years of pain and resentment. I was desperate for reconciliation and healing, but the journey was far more complicated than I ever could have imagined. Here's how it all went down. I have 4 sons. The oldest, Ezra, and the second youngest, Joseph, had a very upsetting incident occur between them when they were in 6th and 4th grades respectively. My now ex-wife and I were not aware that this had been going on. We were called to the school one day, which was highly unusual. Joseph had been pushed down by a peer, which was especially concerning because he was already in a full-arm cast, and had to be held back from retaliating against the peer. This led to him screaming and crying until he made himself sick, which is when we were called. We met with the principal, and Joseph made the surprising allegation that he had been being harmed by Ezra for about 2 years. I won't go into too many details, but we learned that his broken arm was a result of some of that harm. They had both told us Joseph had fallen down the stairs when, in reality, he had been pushed. Ezra had behavioral issues back then, but we didn't know it was this serious. Social services had to be called, and we were at the school until late that evening figuring things out. Joseph went to a grandparent's house while we decided what to do with Ezra. The stress was too much for our marriage, which ended shortly after. I kept Ezra, their brothers went with their mother, and Joseph largely remained with his grandparents. Ezra had never harmed the other two, and they have maintained a relationship. Joseph is now 18 and Ezra is 20. Since they are no longer children, I have tried to bridge the gap between Ezra and Joseph, as Ezra wants to reconcile with his brother, but Joseph absolutely refuses. Initially, Joseph was open to talk about it with me. Now when I mention it, he becomes very curt and will shut me down immediately. I do not think this is a way to live. We are a broken family, but we are a family, and I feel like this is preventing a lot of healing both for Ezra and Joseph. My other sons who are maturing well, and my ex-wife all agree with me. But Joseph is now getting angry and has threatened to cut contact, and his grandparents are supporting this. I am the one who initiated this, so I am asking if I am a jerk for doing so. I met with Joseph for breakfast this morning, something we had already prearranged. While we were there, I told him I am deeply sorry for trying to convince him to talk to and forgive his brother. I admitted that I was wrong and assured him that moving forward, I will be 100% behind him to support and enforce his boundaries. I learned that Ezra had been given Joseph's phone number by their mother, and a day or two before my last talk with him, when he had understandably become distant, Ezra had called and left him a voicemail. When he didn't call back, the second oldest brother also called Joseph and asked him why he didn't respond. I was completely unaware of all of this. I acknowledge this is a very regrettable trend on my part. I asked Joseph what he needed me to do. He requested that I would talk to his mother, and I agreed without hesitation. Myself, Ezra, their brothers, and their mother are going to have a discussion this weekend, and I am currently thinking of how to establish clear rules with them. I have already told Ezra to delete his number, and I did not mince words. I proposed that Joseph could meet with me, his mother, and brothers, minus Ezra, so he could voice his concerns to them, but he declined, which I understand. That's a hard thing for an 18-year-old to do. We are supposed to tour some colleges in the coming weeks, and I think he is planning to uninvite his mother, which I understand. At the end of the day, I think I will always desire for all of my sons to be a family with each other again, but I am going to do better about not being so completely selfish about it as I was recently. I am going to do what I can to try to help them all have healthy and safe lives in their own ways moving forward. I feel incredibly grateful that Joseph and I still have the relationship we do, and I'm going to work hard to make sure I don't tarnish that, more than I already have. For the record, I asked Joseph if he was okay with me sharing these things on a public forum for an outside perspective. He laughed and said yes, and that he has considered it himself recently. I told him I was strongly criticized for the first post, and he chuckled and said, "Well, yeah, I met with their mother and youngest brother today, though Ezra and the brother between them in age joined us over the phone. I started with their mother and told her that she had absolutely no right to give away Joseph's number. This was out of the presence of the other boys, but her explanation was that since Ezra stayed with me, she feels she has to make up ground in their relationship. I told her by doing this, she made up ground with Ezra at the expense of Joseph's. She started to say I was being dramatic, but I told her if she felt that way, then she could say that to Joseph, and she fell silent immediately. I apologize if that's a blunt way to put it. I'm not happy with her for this and other reasons related to her current boyfriend and his influence on our boys. Joseph told me today that the boyfriend is the one who has preached forgiveness to their mother, and he feels that because it's a value the boyfriend has, his mother is now trying to push it for the boyfriend's approval. Additionally, he said the first time he met this guy, he said, so you're the one with the grudge. I told him he can cut them both off completely if he wants. When we were all together, I told them that Ezra's name was not to be mentioned to Joseph under any circumstances unless he brings it up. My middle son became defensive at first, but ultimately understood. Ezra said he was sad to hear this, but agreed, and I told him it should make him and the rest of us sad. The youngest, I think, feels blindsided. I was mistaken in that I thought he was aware of all that was going on recently, but he was not. I apologized for including him in this at first, but explained it's important for him to hear the boundaries verbalized again. He is 15, by the way, still learning. Joseph came over to my house after all that, and I can tell he's struggling a little. I asked if he wanted to talk, but he said not today, so we've just been watching sports. I kind of wanted to thank everyone for strongly criticizing me the other day. This is not to win any sympathy, but this has been a nightmare for many of us, especially Joseph, for years. I've worked, tried to be as present as I could be with all 4 boys living under 3 roofs, 2 of which I paid for, along with paying for all of their therapies and other needed outlets. During that time, I grieved the loss of our marriage. I haven't really slept in 8 years, but perhaps that is karma for the 2 years I missed what was happening between my boys. Here's why I mention this. I got tired, and despite everything I've learned, I just wanted this all to end and bought into the belief that Joseph forgiving Ezra was the only way to bring about that, and I was wrong as heck. All your criticisms helped me remember everything we've worked on that I lost sight of. Thank you for the well wishes for the upcoming college tour. We'll manage to squeeze 4 visits into 1 week soon, and it will be just me and him as well as some leisure travel along the way. We are both looking forward to it. This story highlights the complex dynamics of family relationships and the long-lasting effects that childhood events can have on individuals. The father's struggle to reconcile his sons and maintain a unified family is both touching and heart-wrenching. It serves as a reminder that healing takes time and that everyone's journey towards forgiveness and reconciliation is personal and cannot be rushed or forced. In the end, respecting individual boundaries and choices while providing unconditional love and support might be the most crucial role a parent can play in such situations. I was just a teenager when my foster parents turned their back on me, forcing me out at 18 because I'd no longer bring them profit from the local council's foster scheme. Now, 15 years later, at the age of 33, they had the audacity to ask me to move back in to help them out. The sheer irony and shock of their request nearly knocked me off my feet. Here's how it all went down. I can't believe the audacity of these people. I, a 33-year-old man, was told to leave by my 18th birthday by my foster parents, as I would no longer be profitable past 18 due to the paid fostering scheme by the local council. I quietly left in the early hours of the morning, a month after my 17th birthday. I found my biological parents purely by chance just before my 18th birthday. It turned out that I look exactly like my mother. We nearly look like twins. She was forced to give me up by her parents after having me at 15. She was not given a choice in the matter. I was reunited with my biological family just after my 18th birthday and moved in with them at 19. Then I spent the next 6 years working 60 hours a week and paying no rent. My mom refused to take a penny from me until I could afford a deposit for a mortgage on my own place. I put down a $110K upfront on a $165K 2-bedroom flat in 2015, and I will be mortgage-free before the end of 2024. I have had no contact with my foster parents since I left in 2007. I never had any intention of keeping in touch as they never pretended to care about me during my childhood. However, I do keep in touch with their biological daughter, Kelly, a 29-year-old woman who also doesn't talk to them. She actually supported me during my childhood, and I did the same for her. Just before last Christmas, they contacted Kelly and asked, "Do you still talk to Danny? We would like to get in touch with him." Kelly replied, "That's Danny's choice, not yours. I can give him your number though." So I picked up an old phone and texted them, "This is Danny. What do you want?" They replied, "Hi, how have you been? We've been worried about you all these years." I shot back, "I don't believe you. You want something from me. Don't waste my time with small talk. Just get to the point already." They said, "Okay, fine, you're right. We do have something to ask. We're struggling to pay the mortgage because of recent interest rate increases. Our repayments have gone up. Would you consider moving back in with us to help us out? We need some extra income for the next 15 years. You can have the bigger room with the ensuite bathroom this time." I responded, "I have literally 1 year left on my mortgage and my repayments didn't go up. Maybe I'll even look into paying it off early. So no, I will not move in with you. Have you even tried finding another job? Or maybe you could sell some of your belongings, get a part-time job, get another foster child?" They retorted, "There's no need to be rude to us. We're trying to help you here. We're offering you an opportunity. Do you have a job? What do you do for money?" I replied. I'm a doctor, and I diagnose you as unreasonable. Dr. Danny hereby prescribes you a nice tall glass of silence and a reality check, because you must be confused if you think that you would be helping me by having me pay to live with you. If ever I choose to tolerate your presence in my life again, it will be you paying me for the privilege of my company, they snapped. Oh, forget it. Just leave if you're going to be like that with us. I said, goodbye, have a nice day. They spat out, forget you. I replied, no thanks. At this point, I just turned off the phone and put it back in my forget it drawer. That was December 18th. I had a great Christmas with my biological family and my foster sister, as she spends Christmas with my parents rather than hers. You might think I was being harsh with my foster parents here, especially with my comments, but I assure you that they were experts at doing the bare minimum as parents. I was fed and clothed, I was given a room and a bed, and I was sent to school. No toys, no birthday or Christmas gifts, no care or love. I was basically just a lodger who had his rent paid by the state. And for them to now try and ask for my help while portraying it as them helping me, just no. My biological mother was more of a mother to me on the first day of knowing her than my foster mother was in 17 years. I guess that's what you get when you neglect one child for his entire childhood, and then lose both because of it. Kelly left at 17 just like I did. I know because I was there to pick her up. Reflecting on this story, it's a powerful reminder of the importance of genuine love and care in any form of parenting, especially foster care. The OP's strength and resilience in the face of adversity is admirable, and his loyalty to his foster sister is heartwarming. The story also underscores the importance of not taking relationships for granted, and the potential consequences of treating relationships as transactional or self-serving. I never thought I'd be in a situation where I'd have to banish a close friend from my home, but here I am. A bond formed over shared classes, gaming, and memes, now shattered by disrespect, entitlement, and a shocking act of cruelty. The girl I once considered a sister had become a stranger I could no longer tolerate. Here's how it all went down. As the title says, last week I asked what I thought was a good friend to leave my house because I could no longer handle her behavior. I just want to write it here just to de-stress and deal with the grief of losing a friend. Kendall, 25 years old female, and I met in university in 2016. We studied different majors, but were from the same department. We shared many classes together and bonded over our passion for gaming and memes. Upon graduation, Kendall moved back to her hometown due to COVID-19 and found a job there. We kept in touch online through Instagram. About 3 years later, Kendall told me she found a better paying job in the city, so she's planning to move out from her parents' place. When I asked her about her plans on her accommodations, she replied with, "That's the thing, I was going to ask if you have an extra bedroom that I could move into." For context, I have inherited an apartment from my late grandfather, which is a nice 3-bedroom 2-bath near the city center last year in January, and I currently live alone there since it is closer to my workplace and it has all the conveniences of public transport. After some thinking, I thought that there's no harm in living with Kendall since I considered us as close friends. We discussed the terms and of course the rent. A week later, Kendall moved into my apartment. It was great at first. My home felt more lively than usual, and the thought of going home to a close friend warmed my heart and gave me a sense of security. Things were okay for a while, and then things go downhill super quick. Kendall started complaining about many things at home, about her work, her savings, and how she feels homesick. At first I was very accommodating, thinking maybe she just needs time to get used to the city life. I offered as much help as I can, even to the point of, if she's low on money, I don't mind voiding a month's rent if it meant I could help her to achieve financial stability. I taught her how I save money, how I live off with my then low salary with several commitments like my car, my dog, and a student loan. I grew up where my parents expect me to be independent, so I told her things I do when I'm low on cash, how to get freelance jobs, etc., but she always seemed to have excuses for every suggestion I have. Finding a freelance job is too hard, or how she couldn't let go of her premium junk food, that she isn't willing to cook or meal prep, and I eventually decided to leave it as it is. And after 2 months of living together, I realized Kendall started treating me as some kind of competition. She would constantly ask me things like, how much money I make a month, how many job hops did that take? Anything that she thinks she's better than me, she'll definitely pop that question. She boasts about how she is loyal to her crappy paying company, and how I would never be able to move up the corporate ladder as she called me an industry frog. She once snooped my savings balance and asked how in the world did I have so much saved up with commitments, etc. Mind you, she didn't have a lot of commitments since her parents paid off her student loans and fully paid off a brand new car for her, and maybe I should stop collecting rent from her. I got mad and told her if she isn't happy living with me, maybe she should move out. Cue crocodile tears as she said it was a joke, I didn't have to take her seriously. She begged for forgiveness and promised to never snoop my personal items and details again. I let it go once, But she kept bringing things up like, well, you have the cash and a credit card. Every time I told her I'd rather stay home because I no longer have the budget to go out and have fun. Comments like these became more frequent when I got a new job 6 months ago. On top of that, she doesn't clean up after herself, tried to flirt with my boyfriend, and at times parked in my parking space, when our initial agreement was that she has to find her own parking space if she's moving in with her own car because my apartment only has one parking lot per unit. The straw that broke the camel's back was when I caught her kicking my dog in his abdomen when I got home from work. I yelled at her and rushed to check my dog. Luckily he was fine, but I still rushed him to the vet for safety measures. I got home and she sneered that it was just a dog, and as a friend, I shouldn't treat her like that. I asked why she'd kicked my dog and she didn't answer me. She shrugged and tried to escape into her room. At this point, it was already about a year since Kendall moved in with me. I lost my cool and told her off, bringing up her problems and how I tried to be nice and accommodating. Then I told her I'm giving her a week to move out and that from then on we keep our relationship casual or we don't ever talk at all. Kendall cried and begged me to not kick her out, but soon it turned into her screaming back at me, calling me a bad friend because apparently in her words, I didn't tell her off on how badly she was behaving. Like what? There was a lot of back and forth which I don't remember what I said, but I remember eventually calling her an entitled brat. She cried again saying it was uncalled for and stormed off to her room. The next day, I was bombarded with texts from other university friends, some calling me selfish and others sympathize with me. Apparently, Kendall posted our argument on Facebook and Instagram, painting me to be the bad guy. I was upset at first, but I decided that after Kendall moved out, we would no longer be friends as well as those who took her side of the story and condemned me. Last week, Kendall left, and I have changed the locks on my apartment. I curled up in bed and cried myself out, probably from the sadness of losing a friend. Or maybe I am finally letting out all the frustrations. I am definitely still grieving about this loss of a friend, as I've had many good times with Kendall. For now, I want to focus on myself, and hopefully I eventually get over this. The whole teasing that I have more money than Kendall gotten worse when I told her I was given an offer by an MNC as a senior designer, and I disclosed her the offered salary, as we always did, like I know how much she earns too, which was about 50% more than hers. That was dumb on my part. I now understand why my parents told me to never disclose/discuss salaries the moment I started working. This is a truly heartbreaking story about the loss of a close friendship due to disrespect and mistreatment. It's a stark reminder that boundaries are crucial in any relationship, even among friends. The author showed great strength in standing up for themselves and their beloved pet, and while the process was painful, it was a necessary step towards self-respect and peace. The grief and sadness are real, but with time, healing is possible. This story serves as a potent reminder to always respect the spaces, belongings, and trust of others, and to never let jealousy or entitlement ruin a cherished relationship. Just when everything seemed to be falling perfectly into place, my best friend of 3 years dropped a bombshell on me. He was in love with me. The problem was, I was already engaged to be married. Here's how it all went down. This is a confidential account, as I do not want it associated with my primary account. Also, I am aware that this sub has a major issue with large age gaps, so I would like to point out that the age gap between my fiancé and I is not the center of this post, and I would appreciate it if you kept your opinions about that to yourselves, please. Now, some backstory. I met my best friend Trevor, 39M, and my fiancé Burke, 44M, almost 5 years ago when I was 22, and they were 40 and 34. They both worked together, and for privacy purposes, I'm keeping their occupation a secret. But I met Burke first, and we became good friends. And then I met Trevor next. I was immediately infatuated with Trevor. Him and I spoke quite a bit. We went out on a few dates, and I thought he felt the same way about me. But one day he dropped a bomb on me where he basically told me he never felt anything for me other than friendship, and doesn't want to lead me on anymore. I played it cool and pretended that I too only wanted friendship, and he laughed and said, "Great, glad we're on the same page." I was bitter and spiteful at first, but eventually I got over it, and Trevor and I became best friends. Instead of avoiding him and cutting him out, my pride got in the way, and I didn't want to appear upset, so I carried on like nothing happened. I have no feelings for Trevor now. We're much better off being friends than lovers anyway. Before, I only ever saw Burke when he was at work. Him and I had a running joke where I owed him a date. He gave me a lift home one day because it was raining and he said, "Now you owe me dinner." And after joking around about it for a few years one day, I said, "The heck with it, Burke, let's go get dinner." So we went out as friends and had a good time, and we kept hanging out afterwards, going out for coffee and dinner and to the beach. And then after a few months of hanging out, I developed feelings for him. And apparently he also had feelings for me. And one evening after a Game of Thrones marathon, we ended up having a romantic encounter. Burke and I were together for a few months, and we weren't sure if our feelings were because of the physical intimacy, or if we really did like one another. So we stopped with the physical intimacy, and the feelings never left. So we just decided to start dating. And it's been pretty great ever since. We have had minimal problems, and the ones we have had were easily resolved. Burke and I have been together for 2.5 years, living together for 1.5 years, and engaged for almost a year. We're getting married in a month. Burke and Trevor have grown a bit closer since Burke and I got together, and Trevor is even going to be one of Burke's groomsmen in the wedding. I thought everything was perfect, and we were all one big happy family. Now for my problem. Trevor and I went out for a walk last night, and before we parted ways he told me he's in love with me. He told me that back then when we first met, he didn't feel it at the time, but as I've gotten older and matured and whatever, he suddenly realized that he made a mistake, and he thinks we are compatible, and that I became the kind of woman he wants to date. But when he realized this, Burke and I announced our relationship to the world. I told Trevor that this was the worst timing. I can't believe he did this to me. I'm getting married in a month, and that this is totally messed up. He told me he's sorry, but he had to let his feelings be known now before I get married. He said he also hopes that some part of me still wants him, and then he told me to take some time to process this, and let him know my decision later on in the week. My decision? I still love Burke. He's the man I'm going to marry. All my feelings for Trevor left years ago as soon as I realized he was leading me on and never felt anything for me. I don't know what I'm gonna do. This is gonna change everything. Trevor and I will no longer be friends. Our wedding is going to be one man short, and not to mention Burke and Trevor still work together, and they have to interact with one another quite a bit at work, and this is going to be such a mess. Part of me also feels like this is Trevor continuing to mess around with my head. He didn't want me back then, so I moved on, and now that I'm getting married, he wants what he can't have. I have no idea. I have to tell my soon-to-be husband, but I don't know when or how. Like, when he comes home from work, do I just blurt it out? Do I do it over supper? Do I do it before bed? I know that this is going to cause a pretty big awkward mess, and I want to sort this out with as minimal casualties as possible. Burke worked late last night, so when he came home, I had already finished crying my eyes out and I was fast asleep. And when he woke up this morning, I had already left for work. It's 12:12 p.m. here where I live, and Burke will be home at 7 p.m. That gives me 7 hours to work this out in my head. I'm so upset right now. I just lost my best friend. There's no way Trevor and I can continue hanging out anymore, and once I tell Burke, he's most likely not going to like me continuing to talk to Trevor, which is understandable. Sorry if this post is long and all over the place. I'm just so stressed out. First, I spoke to Burke that night. He came home from work, and before he got too comfortable, I told him we needed to talk, and then we sat down and spoke. I started by telling him about the beginning of Trevor's and my relationship because he didn't know how our friendship began. I then informed him about how Trevor confessed to being in love with me and how I have zero feelings for him. I love Burke and only Burke, and he's the man I'm going to marry. Burke didn't look too surprised. He said he had a feeling that something like this was going to happen because every time Trevor, Burke, and I are in the same general area, Trevor always has this look on his face and seems annoyed and agitated in general. He always assumed Trevor was unhappy about our relationship together. Apparently, it's common gossip around the workplace that Trevor wants a piece of Burke's woman. Burke also told me that he's kind of glad this happened in a way, because part of him always worried that I had feelings for Trevor, or was going to leave him for Trevor because Trevor is a bit closer to my age than he is. I messaged Trevor and told him that there was no choice, and that I love Burke and I'm getting married to him next month. Trevor left me on read and removed me from Facebook almost immediately afterwards. I've seen him out in public a few times here and there, but we never spoke. He wouldn't even look at me. After about a week or two, he texted me and told me that he's sorry things had to come to this. He was almost 100% certain that I still had feelings for him and that this was going to have a different ending. He told me he's kicking himself in the backside for messing me around in the past and missing out on his chance with me, and told me if I change my mind, I know how to contact him. I never replied. I feel closer to my fiancé more than ever, and we've both decided to try for a baby. I've been thinking of asking Burke about starting a family for a while now, but I wanted to wait until after the wedding, so I wasn't trying to squeeze my pregnant belly into a wedding dress, and apparently he was having the same thoughts as I was. I took my last birth control pill on Saturday, and we've both been really busy putting in some last-minute wedding plans and trying to make a baby. Thanks for your help, Reddit. A piece of me still feels empty because I just lost my best friend of 5 years, and part of me wishes there was a different outcome, where I could have both my man and my best friend in my life, and things could go back to the way they used to be, but I know that's impossible. But I'll be okay in the end. I wish I could invite you all to the wedding, but sadly we're already full. At 22 years old, I was hit with the harsh reality of my impending death from stage 4 lung cancer, With only months to live, my main concern wasn't about me, but about the future of my 3-year-old daughter and the fear of leaving her to the same foster system I grew up in. I desperately wanted to give her a better life, even if it meant asking my African-American coworker to adopt my blue-eyed white daughter. Here's how it all went down. As the title says, last week I got the news that I'm dying from lung cancer from my doctor. It turns out that smoking since I was 15 and then increasing it to 3 packs each day a few years ago was a bad idea. Stupid, I know. I thought it wouldn't come so soon though. It's stage 4, and as of now I have months to live. Please don't feel bad for me. I've done nothing good in life except have my daughter, to really feel sad about losing me. I have no family because I grew up in the foster system and aged out at 18. My daughter's father is in prison for serious crimes that even if he got out, he wouldn't be allowed to be in her life. My daughter is only 3. We don't live in a good area. And when I go to work, I have to leave her with an elderly neighbor that always gets her name wrong every day. I don't want her to grow up like I did, in that foster care system. I feel like it's the reason why I messed up and did nothing good with my life. Yeah, I know it's not the only reason and my own mistakes caused most of my issues, but if I just had some family or a support system to keep me in check, it could have been better. I just want to give her some chance to have a better shot than I did. The thing is, I do have an idea for who could take care of her. One of my closest friends is a coworker at my job and she's amazing. While I'm at the bottom of the job, like if they need to lay off people, I would definitely be the first to go. She's their prized worker and makes serious bank. She has a good husband and a kid. I want to ask her if she would be okay with adopting my little girl once I'm gone, but I know it won't go well. The thing is, my coworker and her family are black, and me and my daughter are white. Like we both have blue eyes and can't tan white. There is no way I can ask my friend to adopt my daughter and force her to deal with those kind of issues an adoption like that will bring to her family. But then that just leaves my little girl to grow up like I did, in a bad system with only a will of about $1,000 to help her and a necklace my mother had that I'm going to give her. I don't know if I should bite the bullet and ask my close friend if she is willing to take my daughter, or just suck it up and try to work as hard as I can to get as much money into my will for my girl. But either way, I failed as a mother, and that is a regret I am literally taking to my grave. Okay, I reached out to her and we were able to set up a place to meet. It's some simple cheap bakery you can eat inside. I'm going to ask her if she can adopt my daughter. That way, if she says no, I can have more time to go to an adoption agency near us. Thank you for the support, everyone. A day after my post, I was able to meet up with my friend coworker. And after telling her about my diagnosis, which is something I haven't told anyone at work, I asked her if she was willing to adopt my little girl. She was shocked and tried to comfort me about my upcoming death, but she told me she couldn't give me her answer right then and there. Turns out, she does want a daughter, but something happened in her second pregnancy and caused her issues I don't feel right sharing. So she does want to consider adopting, but she first needed to talk to her husband and talk about planning if he agrees. I understood since it was a big change in their family. I said okay, and after we ate, she gave me a hug and told me she will miss me. This is embarrassing, but I actually started crying. I also started making the emails. Bundy's Playbook gave me this idea and I thought it was amazing. So I created an email for my daughter and started pre-recording videos for stuff. It's nowhere near ready, but I already have some ideas and recorded some videos for her birthdays and some big life events like first crushes and prom and first job. Sad to say, but I realized planning it that most of the videos will be don't do what I did. This is going to be lengthy, so I apologize in advance. First, I started feeling genuinely sick days after Christmas. My whole chest was hurting, as if someone was hitting it with a hammer over and over, and I was coughing up blood. My best friend was terrified that I caught something because the doctors have said that me getting sick right now could be dangerous, so we had to see a doctor. Thankfully, I didn't catch anything. It was the symptoms getting worse. Also, thankfully, at that time, I was still employed, so I didn't have to pay much for the bills. Unfortunately, another terrible thing happened to me recently. After that trip to the hospital, my employer called me in privately. If you recall, I mentioned that if something were to happen, I would be the first to go. Guess what? The bosses were telling me how they couldn't keep me there as I'm dying because it wouldn't feel right, and how it's apparent to them my illness was slowing me down and forcing my coworkers to work harder to make up for me wouldn't be fair and all that. I know I was causing more problems to my coworkers since I got diagnosed, but I didn't think they would complain about me to my bosses. I was naive to think that I wouldn't be a nuisance. I was hoping to still be with them until the end of the month so I could pay my apartment rent. And I had barely enough money for bills, rent, groceries, public transport, and hospital bills. This is where my best friend and former coworker comes in. After testing out caring for my little girl for a few weeks and spending a significant holiday with them, she and her husband agreed to adopt her. She was telling me about some of her plans, and I told her it would probably be for the best that my daughter moves in with them. She asked me why, and I told her our work fired me and I wouldn't be able to care for both of us with so little money. She told me we both could move in with them. They have plenty of guest rooms I could pick. I swear I tried to say no. Her family was already doing so much for us, I felt like this was too much. She told me I could be a significant help for them living there during my last months. Her husband could use the help looking after her as he works. I can help them decorate and fix up her new room. Show them the foods my daughter likes to eat. So I promise I'm not going to be a bother to them. And we are working hard to gather the necessary papers together for the adoption after I'm gone. Besides, me living there could help my little girl become more comfortable in her new home. And guess how affluent her family is? They have a personal family lawyer. When I haven't been feeling sick, we've been working with him to make sure the adoption goes through. Okay, after all of that, I do want to share some other fun news. Christmas with them was probably the best Christmas my daughter and even I have ever had in our entire lives. My friend's family had like 5 Christmas trees in their entire house. Thanks to my friend, I was able to make a really special Christmas gift for my daughter, a Build-A-Bear. Well, it was really a bunny, but still, I made a voice recording telling her how much I love and will always try to keep her safe. And my friend knows about the emails. I'm almost done with them actually, just a few more left. I gave her the password to both the email and this Reddit account, so once I pass, she could delete this one. Sorry, but I've been getting so many messages, I don't want people to message me when I'm gone. And about the messages, I've gotten a lot since I updated. Apparently my story was shared on TikTok, that's cool. It's weird I've gotten so many people reaching out to me and messaging me wanting to talk. I've never had that happen in my life. It's funny how it happens once I'm dying. Tons saying how if my friend said no, they would love to adopt my little girl. Thank you. But thankfully my friend did say yes. But if you still want to adopt, please reach out to a foster care system in your state. There are still children struggling in the system going through what I did. Give those kids the life I could never have. I've also had some saying how they would love to pay me money to help. Please don't bother. Sorry, but it feels weird accepting money. My whole life I've worked for everything I've had, so it feels wrong accepting money and help from strangers just because I'm dying. I do want to address a few messages I've gotten about race. Most were about why I cared about my friend's family and me and my daughter's race being different. It wasn't a lot, but a few called me a racist for caring about that. I want to say that my nerves about that aren't because I think me and my daughter being white makes us better than my friend. Far from it. I've seen a lot in the system and talked with other kids of different races, and those kids of different races were put into care with people who were also a different race from them. They would tell me the problems they faced from the parents. Not that I'm scared my friend will do that, but also from the outside world. Being called names and insulted. One kid told me how she got screamed at by some older lady at a restaurant, and the parents did try to get involved, and it got into a nasty fight. So yeah, I was scared her family and my daughter would face the same bigotry the foster kids I knew from before faced. But I can't let my fears about some bigots ruin my daughter's chances. Anyway, this is probably the last time I'm going to post on here. I don't want to waste my last days. I've thought about taking up painting again actually. I used to paint when I was in high school before I was dropped out, and once in the same school, we've read a classic book about a world where books are banned. I don't remember a lot from the story, but I do remember at the ending when a character said you didn't waste life when you make something to leave behind. That always stuck with me. I want to paint something. Maybe my friend could hang it up or keep it in their attic. But as long as I've left something behind, my life wasn't for nothing, right? I also need to help my friend's family and my daughter settle into their new lives. Thank you to everyone for your kindness, and goodbye. Additional information from OP on her other family members not taking her daughter. Her father is in prison for a hopeful very long time because he committed a crime involving children, so even if he got out, he would not be allowed around her. Not like I would want him to. My parents are dead. This story is an emotional roller coaster that serves as a powerful reminder of the love a mother has for her child. Despite the heart-wrenching circumstances, the mother's determination to ensure her daughter has a chance at a better life is incredibly moving. This narrative also highlights the importance of friendship and the profound impact it can have on our lives. It reminds us that families aren't just formed by blood, but also by bonds of love and care. If you enjoyed today's stories, check out the other videos on your screen now. Submit your own stories at you'rethejerk.com. Subscribe now or you're definitely the jerk.